I want you to know that you deserve better. Recently, CTV came out with another great article about a financial advisor in Ontario who was guilty of $1.8 million worth of fraud by misappropriation of assets. He was taking checks intended for investments for clients and depositing them into his personal account. That's insane. Today, we're going to go through a few different questions to ask to make sure your financial advisor is not committing fraud. Then, we're going to go into a few questions to ask to make sure that they're not a huckster and they're actually following the advice that they're giving to you. Let's get into it. So let's start with the fraud side. First and foremost, I hope this is obvious, but never write a check out to the name of your financial advisor. If I was set up to take checks, which I'm not, everything that I do is digital, more on that later, but if I was set up to take checks and you wrote a check to Chad Wiebe with the intention that it be an investing, that would be a very clear indication that I'm committing fraud. Never do that. In fact, to take it one step further, in many cases, not all, you shouldn't even make it out to the company name because it's not actually the company that's investing in it. It'll be the back office. This will be case by case, and the large organizations might be very different. But again, if I was set up for checks and you were my client, you would not write a check to Pathway Wealth Incorporated. You would write it to one of my back offices, which is either CI Investments or National Bank. For me, everything that I do is digital and it's direct deposit out of either a bank account or a transfer. And because everything that I do is digital, what I do is I share my screen with the client as we're going, and they can see exactly what I'm entering to ensure that I'm not doing anything nefarious by putting maybe my name as the beneficiary of an RSP. They can see exactly what I'm doing. In fact, recently I opened up new accounts and the client was having trouble with Zoom. They couldn't see what I was showing them when I shared my screen. So in that case, I recorded my screen to ensure that I gave them that video to make sure that they could go back and see, okay, we told them to put XYZ as the beneficiary. There's XYZ. There was no fraud committed or anything like that. Transparency is so critical when it comes to this industry. Some of the questions that you should be asking your advisor are they insured and are they in good standing? As a certified financial planner, I am required to have errors and omissions insurance for not only me, the human, but also for Pathway Wealth, the company. I pay for both levels. It's important that we have that errors and omissions insurance because we are human after all. Earlier this year, I made a mistake with a client. I pulled money from the wrong account and it caused a tax implication. Now, I prepped my errors and insurance company. I said, this is what happened. This was the mistake. They agreed it was a mistake. Nothing was malicious. But I also worked with my portfolio management partner to unravel that transaction, undo the taxation. There was, in the end, no harm, no foul. It took a couple of weeks and it was very stressful, but I was glad I had the insurance in place and my client was too. Next, is the portfolio manager that your financial planner is working with CIPF covered, or the Canadian Investor Protection Fund? You want to make sure that the back office is covered by this. I am not covered by CIPF. Modern Advisor or BCV, my two portfolio management partner companies, they both are. And in case of them going insolvent or collapsing, they're covered with that insurance. Lastly, on the fraud side, it's what does their business card or email signature say their position is? Is it advisor or is it planner? There's a difference between those, and it seems very silly, but that is my certified financial planning designation. It's a designation that gives me the certification to use the word planner in my job description, not advisor. It also comes with several obligations that I keep your information safe, that I'm using reasonable guidelines for your projections, and that I'm doing what's within your best interest. But it allows me to use the word planner on here. If you see a business card that has the word advisor, you can replace that very easily with sales representative. Planners plan, advisors sell, and that's a very important distinction. All right, let's switch gears to, is the advisor you're talking to in particular a huckster or not? Or do they actually follow the advice that they are giving? And we've all heard examples like this, right? Never trust a skinny chef or the shoemaker with no shoes. Whatever it is that you can kind of relate to, we all know people like this. And in my industry, there is one caveat that can really skew. Eventually, when I'm old and ready to retire, I could theoretically sell my clientele to a younger advisor that's up and coming. But far too often, I meet financial advisors or planners that are 100% relying on this. And it reminds me of whenever I meet a client that comes to me and says, oh, I don't need a financial plan because my parents are going to leave me so much money at estate time. It seems incredibly short-sighted to me for financial advisors to think that way, especially if they're at a really big institution that could change the valuation of what they could sell their clientele for at a moment's notice or fire them. So here are two big questions I would recommend that you ask your financial advisor. Number one, how do you handle money? You can learn a lot from a financial planner by hearing how they handle money, especially when you compare it to how they recommend that you handle your money. So I'm willing to share some information here about how I handle money so that you can learn about me a little bit more. If you were a paying client, I may be willing to go into further detail if you asked, but here's what I'm willing to share. My wife and I do a monthly budget. At the end of October, we will create a full budget for November. We used to call it nachos and numbers because nachos are our favorite snack. We would make a big plate of them. We would sit down at the end of the month and do a budget together. We now have been doing this for so long, it's pretty well dialed in. I take care of it. I print it for us to review, and it's up on the fridge most months. Within that budget, we are investing 10% of our net income for long-term investments. Now, Chad, don't you say I should be investing 20% for my long-term future? Nice catch. I absolutely do recommend a 20-50-30 budget, 20% for long-term future. I also recommend that in more expensive than average times of life, there is no shame in pulling back a little bit, but just making sure that the habit is still in place. My business is about 6 months. In fact, it's exactly 6 months old as of the filming of this video. And I'm going to wait until my company is standing a little bit taller before I shift back to 20%. We also put money into a series of sinking funds. And for that, I have a bit of a visual. This is a silver dollar from my grandfather's collection. And when I see a dollar like this, I don't see just a dollar. I see a grocery dollar or a date night dollar or a car repair dollar or whatever it is. And in this industry, that's called a framing bias, that I don't see money as money. I see it as very specific purposed money. And that's how Lauren and I handle our money. Our boys happen to both have birthdays in December. So December is a cripplingly expensive month between Christmas and all the birthdays. So we set aside a set amount every single month to make sure that we're ready for that. These are the types of things that we do with our monthly budget. And finally, we have insurance to cover us in case of tragedy. I represent a large number of great insurance companies. Lauren and I both have life insurance and critical illness, and we have a small life insurance and critical illness policy on each of our boys if tragedy struck them. What we don't have, and what is by far the largest glaring issue in my financial plan that I really need to address, I've been procrastinating for far too long, is I don't have disability insurance, and neither does my wife. It's something we need to address before the year is out. Big question number 2 to ask. After you've asked how a financial planner that you're working with handles their money, ask them to prove it. Now, there are 2 groups of people who will fervently disagree with that question or the fact that I'm recommending that you ask that question. Let's go into those 2 groups. The first group, let's call them Group A. They are the ones that have done very well in this industry. In this industry, you can make a lot of money. And maybe they've been doing very well for a long time and they follow what they're recommending. They could be worth an embarrassing amount of money to the positive, right? If I was worth, let's say, or I had investments of $2.5 to $3 million, and I was talking to someone who was struggling to get ready for retirement with a couple $100,000, I understand that that could be embarrassing. So for those advisors, maybe you share these are the types of accounts I have, and this is the asset breakdown in terms of percentages. Maybe you don't share the numbers, but if a client was able to see, oh, he has 5, 6, 7 accounts. He's taking care of his kids with RESPs or whatever the scenario is. Clearly, he is taking care of himself and following what he's recommending. I can trust that, right? Again, you don't have to show the specific numbers, but you can trust that. Group B here is the problem. These are the skinny chefs. These are the people that are blowing through their money, like the person in the CTV article who had no money left for representation after stealing nearly $2 million. That person has blown through their money. And this is where the reality of financial planning and the visual of what our society does doesn't always align. There are advisors out there who I know have nothing saved for their future and yet have brand new cars sitting on their driveway in a big, beautiful house. That is not an uncommon story. In fact, it's a bit of a cliche in my eyes. So ask them to prove it, to make sure that they are truly backing up what they are telling you to do. It's time for me to review your financial plan and get you ready for retirement. There will be a link in the description down below that comes right to me. Until next time, keep planning.